This is the best damn league show, period. And obviously it's not Dom in the other box. It's another not Dom, but it's the first ever person to be not Dom who hadn't appeared in the past, because it is YoungBuck, obviously former coach of, well, yeah, it depends how far I go. We'll just go Fnatic, obviously XL. Now, technically, he's inactive. He hasn't coached for a little while, but potentially interested in becoming a general manager, you were saying, YoungBuck. That's actually quite exciting. I think people need that role.
Yeah, like I feel like there's the role of general manager is becoming way more prominent in Europe, where they're actually taking decisions on the rosters and the staff, where in the past it was mostly just players doing that.
Yes.
And I have the experience, the skill set. I know how to build a roster without just looking at Reddit and deciding who's good based off of comments. So yeah, I have some ambitions to become a general manager and save LEC.
And if people don't know, before all the smart asses jump in, the reply guys, and go, wait, general manager, look at that team he built in Excel. You can just Google on my YouTube channel. I think I made it quite clear that, let's just say YoungBuck didn't decide everyone in that team, and maybe that wasn't his dream 5-man lineup. And spoiler, even when he was gone, it never lasted, did it? So I think we all know that was the year we're going to forget about, and we're going to remember the good times, you know.
It still haunts me, and I don't know how much I can say about that, but I'll tell you this. I went on my knees and said, please do not sign these players. This will not work. And that's
okay.
10th place finish.
Okay. Yeah, right. I will say also, he was the first person to actually get XL into the playoffs when they had Mickey X that one time, if you remember, which I will say also, people do forget that one. Everyone's memory hold when Mickey X got kicked out of G2. And then when he was just really good, they were like, please come back. And then he just came back. And now it's like, he's never gone. What are you talking about? It's Mickey's in G2 the whole time. Now, funny how that works, isn't it? Funny how that works.
It is. But I won't take any, I won't say that was like my idea or anything. But what people might actually forget is that we usually had rosters that looked really bad, and we always finished 7th.
Yes.
We always missed out on playoffs in the last week to like a miracle run or something crazy happening, like 3 underdogs winning.
Yes.
And yeah, people will not remember. It's fine. People won't remember that we almost beat Fnatic in the best of 5 and then made it to Worlds. We just had to go through misfits, but that's life.
And also, you had the eye. You were way ahead of everyone. You thought Caedrel was really interesting years before they did. They had to wait till he just did all the YouTube videos. You already knew he had the mind.
It's actually a little bit of an interesting story, because that is kind of where you are a bad GM or making bad decisions.
Okay.
It was a close decision at the time, because we had to decide between either Dan or Caedrel.
Okay.
And knowing Caedrel had like 10 job offers lined up actually influenced my decision.
Oh, right. Instead of picking the better player, right.
Right. Well, it was like the players were kind of like on board with the idea of Dan, but we ideally wanted Caedrel in the main team, Dan in the second team, and then Dan got an offer from an LEC team, and we had to like really make a big decision there. But Caedrel, we knew he had these job offers, and then we were like, well, okay, I guess it doesn't hurt him that much if we do go for Dan. But that's of course terrible GMing, or terrible decision making.
It is.
Because that's never how it should be. Because if you look at what's best for the org at that moment, it was actually to keep Caedrel.
Yes. Okay, by the way, this episode is brought to you in association with Into the Air. Maybe you've seen on Summoning Inside the Four Horsemen. It's a t-shirt company that does all lovely print design ones. Have loads of plain tees as well. They have a Labor Day sale. That's some American thing. Look it up. Where you get 50% off. It runs from August 21st. So you'll be seeing this video by then. It'll be gone. And it will go till September 9th. I don't actually know what Labor Day is. I have no idea. Something to do with, I don't know, I actually have no idea. I won't even pretend to know. It's some American stuff. But all you need to know is, more importantly, you just get the 50% off buying any of this stuff. I think it's really good. I've actually washed these t-shirts loads of times. They're still haven't got all starchy. They're nice and stretchy. The designs are high quality. I think it's pretty legit. Right, anyway, let's get into this episode. So obviously we're at the LEC Season Finals. We've already had the week before where G2 just decided to, I don't know, ruin everyone else's life who wanted to go to Worlds, because they're almost certainly going to win and still go to Worlds, but now they've probably fucked it up for one of VDS and Fnatic, and we'll see which is which. So there's that angle. But obviously then we had this crazy low bracket thing where, on paper, everyone hyped themselves that this could be a good low bracket, young. But what they said is this, like SKBDS, that could be like a back and forth. Who knows who wins? That could be like a 5-game series. G2 GiantX caused G2 look bad. The Corp was like, well, maybe Jackie's has a game where he carries, or maybe he gets a Zeri or something and he goes off. Sadly, it was 2-3-0s. It was actually pretty boring week of games. Let's just start there. What have you actually thought of the season finals as a whole? Are you shocked that G2's had this fall? What do you think of the rise of Mad Light? What do you think at the moment? Initial thoughts?
I am shocked that although they didn't play well pretty much all of summer until shortly after the international event, they still managed to lose to Mad Lions. But I also think MDK Koi, like I think they're the only team that could have beaten G2 on that off day. If I look at like SK or BDS, I don't know if they would have beaten G2 with just winning draft like that or just having.
Oh, they did some insane flexes, yeah, sure.
But I'll say this: I think it's really disgusting if you're like SK BDS watching that, because I think both teams have a really good matchup into them, and now they're you basically get priced out of Worlds. Just it's disgusting.
What do you think of, obviously it was a long time ago, you were there with different players. What do you think of your former team Fnatic? Because obviously they've done that thing with the whole split, they've been right there, but they can never, except for that one time, beat G2. And even then, I look at that draft when they did beat them in the upper bracket and said, I do actually think Monty's sort of right there. Maybe they just sort of like didn't try everything in the draft on G2 and then they just took something away in the next one, all that sort of stuff. What have you thought of the rise of Fnatic? Like, can Fnatic win the LEC Finals, you think?
I don't think so. I think that Fnatic right now has a really good meta for them. I think they benefit a lot from the AD carry meta, or just any meta where mid laners cannot really impact the other lanes a lot. So, and I think G2 is a team that's way better with that kind of playstyle. I think this Humanoid is one of the few mid laners that doesn't roam as much. And then having this kind of meta, it just really plays into their strengths and weaknesses. And I do think... So there's this thing in the LEC where if you want to be successful, you just sign good players on the bot side of the map, you play to bot side, you draft for bot side, and you do well. And Fnatic is doing this. Like, you have your weak side top laner, you play around your mid and bot with a good jungler. Now, there's one weakness that this kind of lineup has, is the moment you play against a team that can match that, but is better at it, you just cannot win a best of 5. It's so difficult to do. So if G2 just doesn't draft Aurelia top lane and just plays towards bot side every game, I just don't see Fnatic winning 3 games.
That is also the part that people don't like us to bring up about that series, is that like they still could have beaten MDK if they just did, if Broken Blade just didn't go, what, people are just allowed to draft anything top lane, give me Aurelia. It's like, what fucking year is this, mate? That was outrageous, I have to say. That was a bit wild, right?
I mean, if I'm his teammate, I'm so angry. And I know some people are actually going to blame Dylan. I don't blame him at all that in a game fight...
That sounds like the player asked for that, surely, yes. Come on.
Yeah, you have 30 seconds to make a decision. Your player suggests something, and then within like 25 seconds, you have to refute it, come up with another solution. This is not on Dylan.
Yes.
But it's just so mind-boggling, because the entire draft was set in stone. Like, you have the Draven bot lane, you want to play for Draven, you already have Azir, which is not going to control mid lane in this matchup. So... you need to win bot lane and try to free up Mickey to help out Caps throughout the early game. And then you outscale. The moment you're looking at Aurelia, you suddenly have a very volatile top lane that you have to put effort into. So all he had to do was pick a useful champion that was going to lose lane, and even if you're 2,000 gold behind, you would win the game if you play towards your bot lane and give them a 1,000 gold lead. So it's so mind-boggling that a player of that caliber suggests Aurelia in that moment and doesn't just lock in like Sion and just wins the game.
Right, let's get into one of these lower matches. As I say, SKBDS, like, once upon a time, these were teams that expected, to have a chance to go to the finals. One of them was going to come last place in this LEC, and it already happened. It was obviously SK that lost. When I did the last episode, and we were trying to pick who we're going to go with, because, you could make arguments for both teams. I mean, BDS hasn't looked very good, actually, this whole summer. SK obviously did the classic where they look good in the BO1s, then they just, as you say in English, flatter to deceive, which is as you look like you're going to be good, and you kind of let everyone down. That's actually the reason I said in the end I'd go with BDS, because I just said BDS sort of has a thing where they're flawed, no matter how bad they look. They're always going to be able to team fight. They're always going to be around the objectives. They're always going to actually survive in lane unless they're against G2 pretty much. So meanwhile for SK, the problem is, I'm just going to say it's been a theme of the last few episodes. There's a lot of other people I can blame. I could blame Isma in that game, but it has to start with Nisqy, mate. I don't know what happened to this guy's head this year. Like, he just has some really weird ints and moments where you think he's strong and he could do something, and then he just seems to throw the game away. What do you think of SK? What are their problems?
So, what was really interesting is if you go into a best of 5, it doesn't even matter if it's an important one, which this one obviously was. It's really easy to prepare a blue side game and a red side game even if you are not good at drafting. Now, if you notice in game 2, in the first 3 bans, they're already arguing. Like, they have to use, on their third ban, they don't know what to ban. So I think something happened behind the stage,
Right.
and Niski was talking a lot. The coach was talking a lot. So maybe something happened where Niski's like, "Hey, you remember we practiced this Lucian Rumble stuff? I'm not going to play that anymore." And I do want to say a little bit in defense of Niski. I think this meta is terrible for him. I think when you sign Niski, you want him to play champions that roam a lot.
Yes.
And
so it's the opposite to Humanoid, basically, right?
Yeah, like he's a player that enables other players and makes them stronger. So yeah, he's like a polar opposite of Humanoid, kind of, or more Larson. He needs to transfer leads, and in almost every meta that works. Like you can play Ari into Azir if there's like a Azir Corki meta, or you can play a lot of roaming champions into Corki. But now you have a meta where all your AD carry mid lane champions, they're very static. Like you can go and gank, but you don't have the tools to really make anything happen. So I think that was an absolute disaster for SK that they end up in this meta. And I think that's kind of the story for a few other teams where this is a very unique meta and some teams really get hurt by it. And because if you sign Niski, like I said, like 90%, 95% of the metas of the last 10 years, like Niski would be able to find a lot of picks that he would be able to perform on and transfer these leads to irrelevant to the bot lane. And therefore I can even see people that are flaming Niski, like I can see the management saying like, we're actually going to give him another try.
Okay.
Because most metas he will actually do what he was signed for.
But Lucian smolder it.
No, it's not it. Like you just have to hope that this kind of meta goes away if you're SK Gaming, and that's somewhat like that. Like a team like GX is similar, but let's start a little bit about Game 1 because I thought there was something really interesting about the Game 1 draft as well. So SK clearly prepped that BDS is not allowed to play Rel. Labrov is 8-1 on it. Also in spring, he had a really high win rate on it. So they went into this saying we're gonna first pick Rel when we get to it. And then there's like 3 options that can happen. We don't really have to go. I mean, it's like either they get Lucian Maokai or they get Lucian Rumble. Like that's what they were aiming for. And if the opponent picks Lucian Maokai, they probably had a plan for this as well. So they get the first 3 champions that they had, and this is really easy to prepare. So I'm sure they've had this on the board. Like, okay, we're gonna get Rel, and then we're gonna get Lucian and Rumble. In what universe does it happen that on 4-5 someone looks in Nocturne? Like it doesn't work at all with this. And then you also add Kai'Sa. So Kai'Sa only setup is Rel. It's a dive champion, while you have Lucian and Rumble, which is like more like long range poke kind of champion.
What would you have preferred?
It doesn't make sense, right? Because like if you're a coach and you have your first 3 and you are all happy with it because clearly this is really easy to prepare. They knew this was going to happen. You prepare for a scenario where your opponent bans 2 junglers and 2 AD carries. So they ended up banning 2 junglers, and at some point Isma must have said, well, if this happens, if they ban Vi and Sejuani, which is like really easy to predict, I'm going to play Nocturne. And the team and the coaching staff said, we're happy with that. And it's just it doesn't make sense. But I also think that it was really clear from this series that Isma doesn't play AP junglers other than Maokai.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big weakness for their drafting. They had to pick the Rumble there. Because,
I mean, the whole meta's against them right now based on what you're saying, because jungle mid, they're kind of fucked, right?
So. Yeah, Isma didn't play these kind of champions in the summer, and he clearly from this series, like he wasn't going to play them. He just plays the Maokai if it comes to like magic damage champions. If I were in a situation like a coach, and I would probably like worst case you pick Ivern, but I think if you're a little bit crazy in the head, you might like pick something like a Mumu, which has a good matchup into Maokai, or you just pick a really bad champion for the game that is good at diving and just winning the game. Because what you see now is SK has a team that cannot team fight at all. They played perfectly the first 70 minutes.
Mega lead, yeah.
Like it was extremely well done. Like early drakes. They get 2 early drakes. Like the 3rd drake is at 17 minutes. But it's so hard to execute against a good team fighting composition.
Yes.
Like they approach the dragon like they have a normal team composition. Yep. They don't really contest mid lane, even like the mid lane tower, even though it's like 10% HP, and they should just be standing around there and like throwing shit at the opponents. No, they just go set up a Drake like they're taught to do with just about any team composition, and they lose the game. Like, but even if they don't lose a team fight there, like the best case scenario is that you get some 50-50 smites. So I don't know. I think they probably go back to the drawing board at the end of the year and look back on this, and they're like, okay, how did this kind of draft happen? And then you have the argument in game 2, like how can you argue in the first 3 bans, like you know what you're going to ban. And it also showed like in the 3rd game they ended up banning differently, but suddenly Lucian priority was gone that they seemed to really think was strong in the first game. It's I think this team was really haunted by draft and meta. I think they're better than people give them credit for, and now looking at next year, like Irrelevant's contract is running out.
Yeah, that's a problem. A lot of people should want him. A lot of people should want him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, almost anyone could sign him at this point in time.
Yeah, so Irrelevant's gone. You can sign a Korean top laner because you have 2 Koreans on your roster right now.
True. Yep.
So you can kind of predict what's going to happen with SK. Like they might change something in mid jungle. They might. I think that they all considering that like the alternatives are not really there. Like I think if you replace Niski, your only real alternative right now is Perks, which I think is still a fine option. But you have Niski on the contract. Do you really want to pay him out for the end of it when he might actually be able to show something? And then you're going to have to downgrade because you already know you're going to basically get one of the top laners that is going to fall through, like maybe like a BDS Science Irrelevant and Adam falls through, or Finn,
or you bring Auto out or inactivity or something. It's one of these ones, right?
Yeah. So and you can't import anymore because you used your import slot. So really good luck with that. But also game 2, I think people want to flame Niski a lot, but when that level 1 happens, your game is just and you get hit by an Ash arrow. You burn your flash level 1, you get your flash burned again. You get hit by an arrow. This shit just happens. I wouldn't even flame Niski necessarily, other than just not doing level 1 properly.
Also, it seemed like Adam got out of control in that game as well, mate. He was way too strong with the Cassiopeia.
Yeah, I think that is the one thing that BDS did really well. This Cassiopeia prep was phenomenal.
Yes.
Because playing it into Rumble meta, Lucian meta, a soft counter to both. I think this is really smart. I think some people might argue that they shouldn't have showed it, but I think they should. I think G2 doesn't have the same priority, especially on Lucian.
Oh, sure.
So they'll have to come up with something new. But I think it really worked, and I think that whoever found that pick in BDS is a genius, because it did kind of. I want to say wins them 2 games, but I think it's a little bit on SK just drafting weird as well.
Sure.
But that was a fire pick.
Yeah,
that was really well found.
And also, everyone had been flaming the fuck justifiably out of Adam's champion pool. They found something that actually, once he got rolling, remember, Elvin's supposed to be the guy who always wrecks him. He looked fucking great in this game, actually, Adam.
Yeah, he was on fire. I mean, yeah, but if I look at game 1, SK plays well, doesn't get to has to play their team composition well, and it's 10 out of 10 difficulty to play out. Doesn't do it. You go into game 2, you get completely fucked by level 1, follow up with an Ash arrow hitting. And then game 3, you see that SK is fully panic mode. They're okay, let's play Sejuani Azir and scale for late game. And this is not how SK plays the game or how they can win games.
Yes.
This is not Niski. This is not you can see the panic in their eyes, and they don't really know what to do. And it's quite common. Maybe it's better than not trying anything. But I think they should just come back to some Lucian type of drafter, banning the Maokai again, because clearly they were afraid of it.
No, I know what you mean. For me, SK was at their best when they were the early game team, were accelerated through and got people like Rael or Niski in position to carry. Whereas of all the teams you're not going to scale against, not going to do against BDS. They're really good at all those setups late game. They actually make pretty good decisions usually. I know what you mean. By the way, I actually think the first thing you said is probably the most telling thing. This is basically your season. At the end of the year, your SK game, look, you've had chances from the BO1s. You've shown, I imagine, scrims, you probably win a bit. You have to think, I have a chance to go to Worlds. And you've thrown away your last series, as you say, potentially, with not even on the same page going into the draft. That's crazy. Surely that's the one moment you want everyone on the same exact page. We all agree, whether it's good or bad, we're all going to agree to this plan and we're going to do it. You're not switching it up in game 1. That's crazy.
Yeah, I can't see that they agreed on this draft. I don't know. I don't know what happened. The Nocturne game 1, it doesn't make any sense. If you at least want to pick a bad champion, it's not because Nocturne isn't even good into Ezreal, Rakan, Cassio. It's just awful. So if you want to pick a bad champion, just pick something that dives really well. Because Xin Zhao, Poppy are also terrible against what the opponents have, but at least they are not reliant on an ultimate timer. So. Yes. If you want to pick something bad and snowball the game, do it that way. If you want to pick something more team fighting, pick something like Amumu, so that you at least have an option to wombo combo someone. But yeah, a terrible drafting, but it also just seems like players are maybe picking things in the moment.
Also, this is one of those moments where I've done my best this year to defend LEC against all those allegations. They're like, it's the shittest region, look how bad it is, the games are so terrible. Like, for example, I did say in most of summer, it was also because it's that ADC meta. I think a lot of teams had a bad time, like, calculating team fight damage, and they couldn't really do a lot of good 5v5s. People, it was kind of like just a solo queue game, people just bashing buttons stood next to each other. But here's the thing, I can't on this series, being as SK is supposed to be, like, on paper, like, the fourth best team at one point, I can't defend this because... like, it's so jarring, YoungBuck, to watch LCK and LPL, and I'm seeing all these, like, sick fucking niddly junglers and stuff. Then I'm coming back over, and it's like some of the junglers, like you say, have, like, 2.5 champions they play, and they're not even meta. And I'm like, what are you going to do? You can't play Sejuani in some of these comps. Like, it's kind of a bit jarring, mate.
It is. And so the LEC is already weak because all the good players are spread out over all the teams. Like, I think something that is like for like the G2 GX, like there was like a really big individual skill difference. And I'll make a statement on that. GX is the only team that doesn't have a top 4 player on their roster.
That's fair. Yeah.
Maybe even top 5. But if you look at like all the top players are spread out since like after 2019.
Yes.
Which is awful for the region. And then I think looking at the last offseason, like the big offseason, I don't see many teams that really improve their roster where you're like, okay, that's impressive.
Yes.
Like, there's a few teams that made, like, small progress. Like, I do think SK came out with a better roster than they had the previous year. I think the same for Fnatic. But do you think that at the end of, like, you go into November 2023, do you go into 2024 thinking Fnatic is now going to beat these international monsters with that roster change? No. It's like, no.
By the way, I know what you mean, because put it this way, when I was putting together, I'll probably do an article or video soon, like, what would my, like, team of the season be? Dude, there's no 2 players from the same team. Obviously, I have Caps mid. Everyone else, some of them are even not even the good teams. Like, I have Kazi as my ADC. I have Labrov as my support. I have Razork as my jungler. I have Irrelevant as my top. Like, bro, they're all in 5 different teams. Like, what is this?
Exactly.
Like that. By the way, that would be a pretty sick lineup in itself. But even if you took Caps out and put a good mid in there, you could have had this team. Someone could have had that with like Humanoid or fucking Larson or something. People just haven't built the squads outright. It's like you say, people have done weird things. Like, one thing I think's really weird, YoungBuck, is it's one thing if you say, right, I want to build on what I had last year, but some of the cores they have aren't even that good. Like, put it this way, this BDS is in this game right now. BDS, I actually think, is a triumph of coaching. Like, it looks like actually they've got pieces that I think, some of them I think are quite weak. Like, I think sometimes Adam can be a bit sus. Shio just gets missed by entire metas over and over again. Ice, fair enough, was a pretty good addition. I didn't expect that gamble on Crowny to work out. But the one thing is, when I look at their lineup, I'm like, I feel like it's almost certain they're just going to keep most of these players. As you say, maybe you change top, because, by the way, I actually think also if you had a weak side top on their team, you could just win a lot of more team fights as well. But even if you bring in like a good top laner, I don't know that they're going to be the ones getting irrelevant. I imagine he's going to Fnatic or something personally. But if you bring in a good top laner, at the same time, we're saying what we're going to Worlds with Shio and Nuke and trying to win Worlds. Like, come on, mate. It's not even plausible if you watch the other regions. Like, they have monster mid laners and junglers.
Yeah, so there's the problem of depth, but and then the problem of them being spread out. But I think BTS could try to stick together. I think they have 4 players running out of contract, and they don't like. It really depends, I guess, on Fnatic if they want to have Irrelevant or not. But if you're Irrelevant, then you don't get to join Fnatic. Like, what's
it's
left?
A good spot to go to still, yeah.
It could be BDS. Like, if I were BDS, I'd try to go for someone like Irrelevant or Photon and just run it back and make it to Worlds. And yeah, you won't make it far, but I think you cannot make it that far anyway unless you nuke your entire pun intended entire roster.
Yeah. And like also go on.
For a deep run, you need a top 3 player in every role, maybe even top 2 if you're an LEC.
Sure.
So you probably are going to have to import some Koreans, because like you're not going to sign Caps away from G2. You're not going to sign away Razork. So like already good luck like finding the second best jungler or mid laner that you have available. I think if you're someone like a team like BDS, you just run it back and try to make just like they did last year, just improve one spot in the roster and just run it back.
And also, like, if to really emphasize the point, if people think of some of the teams that did quite badly recently, bro, players like Larson and Photon are just sitting there. Like, even if people are going to go, yeah, but like Larson wasn't as good. Look at his fucking team, mate. Like, it's literally the team that just joins the game, does nothing and loses. Like, that's the worst possible style for him. He's just a fucking farmer, and you put that player into a lot of teams, he could be amazing. Photon, obviously, we've seen him smash lane a million times. Like, these players are on the worst teams. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think Rogue is the roster where everyone looks worse because they're playing with each other.
That's fair.
It's like, okay, so like part of GMing is you sign a engage, support, and jungle. Like those are the roles you generally want your engage from. And you look at Rogue, and you have Marcoon. Like he's a decent follow-up engage player, but he's not good at primary engage. And then you have Zoe, and it's kind of the same. It's like more like a peeling player, like not that great at being the primary engage. So good luck team fighting when you don't have a player on your roster that engages.
Yes.
Like you have to fix it by having your engage on top lane and have him be on every objective first. Like, or you have to play long range, which is extremely difficult to actually execute. So everyone on that roster looks worse because of each other. Like I think if you put Marcoon on a roster with Mickey X, like we've seen that, like Marcoon looks a lot better. You put Zoe on a roster with an engaged jungler, like he will look 10 times better as well. Yeah, and then the same goes for Larson. Like he cannot win team fights because he doesn't have a front wall in front of him.
Yes. Oh, by the way, also, obviously, you have a disclaimer. Marcoon was one of your players. You brought him in the league. He's also Dutch as well. We'll just put that out there. But that's actually one thing I have to say is really sad, YoungBuck. Aside from this year, he's always been a reliable player. He was probably sometimes even underrated. He was probably like 4th or 5th best jungler at times. But I actually have to say, if people are going to do that thing that some of the GMs have done, where they just go off like Reddit narratives, dude, he's going to have no LEC job after this year. Like, how's he going to get to stay in the league? Like, unless it stays on Rogue, I feel like a lot of people are going to be out on him, sadly. They're going to just think he's bad.
Yeah, I think that might be the end of his LEC career. Yeah. And I think if you're a GM and you want to, I think he naturally plays best towards top side, like, and he's really good at early control and diving. Or if you have an incredibly strong bot lane, you can sign him and tell him like, hey, you're going to lock in early game champions and you're going to control the bot side of the map, and he'll be able to do it really well and shot call as well, because he needs to play champions that win early game matchups for him to be feeling confident in the game and shot call a lot. And he's actually quite good at it. So there is a place for him in the LEC in the right roster, but I think people are just going to pass up on him based on the year in Rogue. And you might see the same thing happen with Finn. You might even see the same thing happen with like Comp and Zoe whose contracts are also running out. It's like people don't really want to take the gamble when they can try to sign a new rookie or a Korean player.
Yes. Okay, let's do the G2 GX series. So the main problem, as I said, was as bad as G2 had looked, on GX, look, I enjoy the aspect of, I just like to see Kanjaki's carry game. That's the setting I put my brain into when GX play. We couldn't carry any of these. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to. Like, they're just losing pretty much the whole game.
I think what's most telling is G2 just let them play whatever they wanted. Like, they just, when I look at the bans, then they don't even target Jackies. They didn't target Patrick. They just like, just play your style. We're just going to play whatever we want. And that's fine. Like, they just banned stuff like Vi. I guess the Ziggs ban was just kind of to prevent them GX from playing cheesy kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, this is just a individual skill difference to the maximum. And maybe surprisingly from GXs, they locked in red side 3 times in a row. Their last pick didn't seem that inspiring in any of the 3 games. I really wonder, like, isn't there anyone after 2 games saying like, hey guys, maybe let's try the blue side draft. Like, let's change it up a little bit. So I thought that was surprising. Like, having such an important BO5 and just going out picking red side like all the time. I would have probably mixed it up. Or if I were them, I would just not play double 80 every single game. Like, at some point you have to throw in something, and you're not going to beat G2 playing double carry against double carry.
Here's a question I have though, YoungBuck. I've noticed that at the moment, Caps is the only mid laner who doesn't even try to get on the Zeri. Even though, again, if I'm watching the LPL, bro, the second one of those mid laners gets on a fucking Zeri, I'm like, right, game on, get the snacks. Let's see if this guy... Do you think he's intentionally not doing it? Is he saving it? Because I would have thought he'd want to carry one of these. This is like the 1v9 champion, bro.
Unlikely, but if there's one guy telling his team right now he's saving Zeri for the finals, it's probably Caps.
Okay.
Like, and I don't mean like LEC finals. Like, he pulled this on Fnatic before. Yeah, like if Fnatic 2018 is like, I'm winning every game on Aurelion Sol in scrims. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it for the finals and Worlds. This is Caps. So like, there's a world where he's waiting for nerfs, and then he's gonna bust it out when no one plays it anymore. So
yes. Yeah. By the way, that's also called like great player luxury. Like, you can, if you're a great player, you can go, that really thing that could win every scrim. I'll just keep that in my back pocket the whole time. Like, Jackie's has to bring it out every game he can get it to try winning the LEC, guys. He can't fucking wait. Like, no, if there's one person could maybe get away with it, it's maybe him. And also, this is why it's the dream for Dylan Falco. It's like, mate, you got Caps, but you got Caps in the era when he's like, yeah, let's play wherever you need, boss. It's like, you're the best player and you're doing that. You're not even doing the ego picks. Like, it looks to me like he also, I think actually, even though G2's had their problems, I think one of the things I've been very impressed with Caps is it looks to me actually like he just actually fills up the draft sometimes, bro. He doesn't even ask for the priority, I feel like.
No, I don't think he's ever like the type of guy who really demands a lot of attention for the draft, like early picks. And yeah, I mean, he's just having a really good split. And this is also like when you sign really good players, you also sign like a meta adaptability. Like again, we're talking about this really unique meta. Like Caps is really fine playing this type of meta. Yes. He will be able to team fight on these AD carry champions. If you look at, for example, GX, if I were them, I wouldn't really want an Ashe Ezreal bot lane meta. Like this is a disaster for them. Like you have 2 carries. Your top laner is not going to play a carry ever. So you're really relying on your meta to be perfect for your ADC. And every player has some kind of meta reliability. Like Patrick is really good in most metas, but then you had Ashe, Ezreal, Varus type of metas, and suddenly, yeah, your teams might struggle because you need to have a winning bot lane if you have like a weak side top laner.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's another thing that I do think is brutal if you're a GM. It's like, fucking, you can't actually know what the future is, so you can't know what Riot's going to do to the game. Yeah. So of all the splits ever, where you say, you know what, the Antonio, fair enough. It's not like our team's good. You, as a reward for your million years of service in the RLs, you can come into the LEC. And by the way, he's done what his job was, which is you're going to come in, you're going to play your weak side, you're going to be on all that same shit you played all the time. And of all the times where that's not actually good, like in theory in this team, you would have thought that would be the stabilizer, right? Go cool. Now Patrick's and Jackie's get to carry every game. They're going to be... But yeah, I think it's actually probably the worst time ever for it to happen.
Yeah, and like I really love looking at trends in general, like in like the LEC. Like up until season 8, you didn't have to play like early game at all. Like you had no plates. There were so many comeback mechanisms. You just needed to be good at team fighting. And slowly and steadily, the game has really started to favor strong side, bot side, because the Drakes became very important.
Yes.
The plates came into play, and you see that slowly, like the weak side AD carries have been phased out of signings. Like the players like Reckless, Neon, Xmati, like they've slowly been phased out, and there's just even like Crowny, I guess. Like these players are going to become a little bit redundant because everyone needs to have strong side ADCs and strong side mid laners, so that you also see a bit of a tendency, although most LEC players have that. And now you see the same in top lane. Like you slowly see this change where, hey, we need to have more than just a weak side top laner. We need to be able to play strong side. This is starting to get valued way more because top lane champions are like, there's a lot more aggressive top laners. There's no longer Sion or like 9 out of 10 metas. So it's really cool to see this kind of change and how that really affects like roster building, but also like the value of individual players. And yeah, if you're Antonio, like you're playing ERL next year, yeah. I guess he's aware of that as well. But
sure,
like he did his job, it was fine, but the game has moved on way past like only being able to play weak side top lane. Yeah, so I don't know what else there is to add to it. Because...
What about for XL GiantX, your former team, right? After your lineup, one of the things I've been really confused by is they've twice now imported Korean junglers, but both of them to me are just like the most meh players I've ever seen. It's like, I just don't know what you were hoping you were going to get from them. Like I thought Peach was just whatever, and the G1 guy's just whatever too. Like I don't like if you're going to use an import. Here's the difference. I'll at least say Ryle and SK showed me something. He had some games he could carry. Was on. I don't know what the point of these imports is. Like, bro, we have European junglers that can do this.
I think I agree actually. So when we were initially roster building, we said we need a Korean mid laner and a Korean support, and maybe an AD carry. And jungler is not really the role you want to import in. Like there's plenty of junglers that can fill in a lot of roles. It doesn't make that much sense, but I don't have anything against it. If you have 0 Koreans on the roster and you want to import, like then you can go for a jungle position. But generally speaking, you don't want to import like top or jungle, unless it's bow. But that's like a different story, of course. So yeah, like if I'm GX right now, like you can continue with Johan. You can also say, you know what, we're going to free up that slot. We're going to throw an offer to Photon really early in the off season and tell him like sign now or we're out of the race, and put that kind of pressure on him so that you sign someone who can actually play strong side top lane. And then you still have a slot for another role, because I don't know if Ignar counts as EU, NA, but I think either way he's probably not surviving the year. So you could open up another import slot if you needed or wanted.
Apparently his residency's in Korea, it says here. That surely can't be right. Oh, that's amazing. You would have thought he'd be in after all those years, wouldn't you? Okay, maybe it's because he just came in back and forth, I guess. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you, and it goes like this. I've heard a lot of GMs and coaches now are using what you were actually ahead of the game on, which is they're using those analyzers for the next talents. And that's actually where, if people don't know, a lot of these signings, especially the import players, are coming from, especially like LCS, LEC. I've heard that's why they're picking up. It's not really what the old school people might think, which is that, you know, like the GMs going and watching LCK Challenger, like, is he good? Is this solo cute? They're not really doing that. They're using these things that tell them, like, right, this guy overperforms in that way. What do you think about that? Because I would hope in the future that could elevate a bit of the GMing, that we're not just going off silly Reddit narratives.
Yeah, I think you opened a big can of worms here. It's a very long topic.
Go for it. Yeah, that's why I thought we'd do it at the end.
Yeah. So there's an analyst who created an algorithm, a solo queue algorithm, tracking to like AI, blah, blah. Basically, it's been hyper accurate at finding the absolute best players in their position at the given moment. So its only weakness is it cannot really predict the future, other than you know that like lower tier players, when they go to an upper tier, they usually improve a bit. And so like a summary, for example, in Excel, we used this to sign Finn. Finn finished 10th in NA, looked awful the entire season, but we looked at the data, and when we couldn't sign the players that we wanted initially, like there was Summit, actually a fun story, that was a moment. We wanted to sign a Korean challenger top laner. But two of my players told me we should not sign a random Korean top laner based off of this algorithm scouting. This player is named Zeus.
T1, yeah. It's mad, isn't it?
So it was really hilarious. Like, we did try to sign him, like, regardless of the player opinion.
You just think what could have been, though, don't you? I don't know.
Yeah, they said, please don't sign Zeus. He's a random Korean challenger top laner. So
we won't say who the players are, but that will haunt them forever, I hope.
Yeah, it will. But yeah, that's one of those hilarious stories, because like we believed in the algorithm. We tried anyway. We couldn't get it. We had to sign an LEC player or like a European player, and Finn actually scored really high compared to like a lot of the hype rookies at the time. Like I remember it was like Aggressivo, Ebo. Like people really wanted to see them in LEC, but hey, like our program told us like sign Finn. He's not the best in LEC, but he's the best you can sign. And look where we are. Like we got a lot of hate for that signing. Look at MNS. Like
that's the one, by the way. I've actually told that story before, that MNS was actually a product of that, because the problem people have, this is where I know if you only go on Reddit, guys, if you go on Reddit, because he did and play badly at the end in Cloud9, you all think he sucks. Bro, you can ask players. His mechanics are really fucking spicy, mate. He has a lot of skill, doesn't he? Like, if he could have been channeled right, he could have been a potentially a good player. It's maybe attitude issues is his issue, right?
Yeah. What was great about him is that he was playing in Turkey, so he was playing solo queue in the EU ladder, which means we can compare him to all the other players in Europe. Right. And he actually came out like top 2.
Wow.
So we signed, and this is maybe the biggest mistake we made in the year 2022, is we signed him to the academy. He was like the first signing we did, purely based off the tool. And then we had agents and players and coaches coming in telling us, we don't want to play with MNS. This guy's an Inter. Look at him, how much he ran it down in Turkey. And we kind of know what happened, right? Because in the ERLs, he like broke every record possible, and then joined C9 and went to MSI with them. So and World. So it's like, like I just think like my opinion is that people try to scout a lot for like personality, but even when you ask people for references, you're always gonna get like bullshit. Like that's my experience. So just sign players based on their in-game capabilities, and then do whatever problem comes up. Make sure they have individually high ceilings, and then make sure they're compatible with one another. Like if you sign MNS, but you have a support that doesn't want to leave his lane, like of course it's going to be a disaster. But once you have someone like MNS on the roster, and you actually build around him, he's going to be one of the best mid laners.
By the way, when you say that line, that's another mini can of worms I'll open now, about if you ask other coaches and analysts, like, hey, what was he like when he was in your team? I'll tell you something right now, guys. If they give a bad report about the person's attitude, they were a fucking nightmare, because anyone who's even vaguely decent at doing their job and nice to the coaches are just, they're fucking bleeding hearts in esports pro. It's like my boy Peter Dunn. He'll do that thing where every time a player gets promoted from academy in NA, he'll be like, I'm so glad to see he's been promoted. This guy's a really good player and he's really trying hard. And I'm like, bro, you wouldn't sign him to your team. Shut the fuck up. Like, it's all well and good that they sign him to their team and fail, mate, because you like him. But if I said to you, right, Jankos is leaving, you want this guy in jungle? You wouldn't fucking say, yes, please. You'd be like, oh, I don't know about that. You know, so there's, like you say, there's a lot of bullshit if you ask, right? Like, you're hoping they'll give you the real truth. But the problem is, you're sort of asking your rivals. They're not really incentivized to tell you, no, don't sign him. He's not that good.
Yeah. There's hilarious stories where I guess I won't say names because it's a little bit aggressive. But let's just say it was in one of my bigger teams. We had to replace someone really important, and we had to do like a background check. And his current coach told us, like, yeah, this guy's great to work with, really passionate about the game, very easygoing.
I can already tell who it is. But go, keep going.
Of course, this guy ended up being something else, it's probably like the second craziest experience I've ever had in my entire esports career, and that's a long career.
Sure.
But like the best follow-up is like we go to this event, and the coach that like was like bragging about this player like talks to one of my players, is like, haha, I really fooled that, or like I really got you guys to sign him.
Oh, that's so evil. That's so evil.
Like it was really next level.
By the way, that's actually one area I will say that is an area, even though, look, we are all competing against each other. I mean, we're all thinking like sports. I don't have to help you if you're but I will say that's one area, by the way, where Korea will always kill us dead, guys. Koreans are just sort of straightforward like that. I've heard if you actually ask, they just sort of tell you like, yeah, he was, good in the practices, but he needed to work on his own. I've heard they just sort of straight up tell you if you're in the LCK and you're another coach, because they all have that relationship, that respect, and they sort of want Korea to succeed. Whereas the problem we all have in the West is it's that crabs in a bucket thing. Like, if anyone's good, we all just want to drag them down. We don't want to all collectively rise as Europe. We want the other person to be the worst in Europe, and we'll be the best in Europe. That's the way. We want to be the big fish in the small pond.
Yeah, I mean, so if you go to an international event, like back in the day, like Season 7, 8, 9, 10, the first thing you do is you root against TSM if you're an LEC player. But the second most fun thing to see happen is see your other LEC teams like fail miserably.
Yes.
Like, I know it's maybe a sad reality, but that like usually that's what like
when they do, when all the players are doing those tweets like, oh, cheering for Fnatic today, they're all lying, guys. They're cheering for Fnatic to get dumpstered by like Dam 1 or something. They don't want to see him fucking win the game. No,
exactly.
No way.
No.
Yeah.
No.
What about, you referenced some of the names there. Bro, we've already done like Thorin, cards, all these sick players that are out there. The worst ones are the ones where it's actually the Karmine Corp ones where the fans have just decided, bro, these players can never, ever play again, right? I think it's beyond obvious after you watch this split of summer. Upset has to be on a good team, mate. Like, that guy's still got it. It's just obvious. And then a lot of people narratively are out on board because everyone promised so much and nothing really came from it. But all I'll tell you is, that's one of those ones where privately, and I'm not a coach, so they're not lying to me. That's one of those ones where every player that I ever talked to privately or that played with or coached this guy, Bo, says that it's not even hype. He is like a generational mechanical talent. Like, he could actually be something incredible. What do you think of these two players? What would you do with them? Should they both be in LEC?
So, like, I mainly judge my opinion of players now not on my own eye test, but more on like the algorithm.
Okay.
And I don't think enough teams are actually using it. It's like an incredible tool. Like, it's so hyper accurate. It's like I have so many stories of players that we found years before they became big or tried to sign. So here's the thing with Bo. It never ever happened that a player is rank 1 in every important statistic, and then you look at Bo in LEC 1, rank 1, rank 1, rank 1, rank 1, and we even have the capability to compare like how far ahead he is of the second guy. We've never seen anything like it. Like this guy is so much better than the second best jungler in the LEC. Like, mechanically, it's like this guy needs to be on a team. Like, if an LEC team can sign him, they should do it. Upset actually had 1 year where he had like relatively similar stats, where wow, this guy is really way ahead of the second guy. But I think what happened a lot in LEC is that the signings of AD carries in the past were atrocious. And then we had players like Hansama in the LCS. We didn't have Korean imports. So, like, this is also something that really happened to Patrick, where he was an S-tier player. But over time, it's not that he got worse. It's just that the level of play in ADC, like the players that were signed, just got better and better. All the low-tier players were actually, are gone. All the weak side players are gone. And now suddenly, like, you're really competing, like, in the middle of the pack. And I think, like, with Upset, like, he deserves to be on a good team based on what I see. But then also, like, good luck finding that team, because, like, if you're not on KC, like, let's say you cannot get a good roster there, like, you're not joining G2. So if I were him, I would just try to build a roster around him and Bo somewhere.
Yes. No, on the ball one, that's the other thing as well. Everyone says what it's obvious to see if you watch the LEC games. They go, his late game decision making is so bad. I've heard he would just win every scrim before there was a late game brawl. Like, essentially, like the laning phase at the end of the game, he's just got a million kills and everyone's ahead in all the lanes. It's like the game's over. So he's never practiced in a late game.
Yeah, yeah. But even his late game decisions were good in scrims. Like I cannot remember scrimming him and saying like, okay, this guy actually has a weakness. So if the algorithm says he doesn't have a weakness, I already believe it. And then sometimes I do an eye test on the player just to make sure, like with Finn, MNS signings, etc. If you do it with Bo, like I don't really see it, and I think you actually need like team comms to really judge a player's like late game decision making. And if you cannot do that, do your own eye test if you want to, but you're probably not qualified to do it. So just follow the numbers.
Sure. Right, let's do the upcoming matches then, what you think of them. Right, the problem with the G2 BDS series is this. Right, the biggest problem ever here is, bro, even when BDS is the best, they can never beat G2. I actually think they're the new Rogue into G2 back in the day, where it's like, even if Rogue was capable, they had that crazy mental block where it's like the joke is in the best of 5, you feel like you start 0-1 down. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like you can never do it. Is there a world in which BDS can beat G2? Come on.
No. The only world is one where G2 goes back into that weird drafting habit, or they're trying to hide things for the final when they shouldn't. But I think if it's like a cookie cutter draft, G2 is just gonna win 3-0, 3-1. I don't really see the win conditions for BDS. I think maybe Adam popping off on like weird champions, but I don't know if the meta. Yeah, the meta lends a little bit towards it, but I think you can always at G2 just lock in red side and last pick top line. Like if that's your only weakness in draft. I think Yike playing champions like Ivern is actually really good for the roster. I think if you look at G2 as a team, you want to draft towards the people who are comparatively better than their counterparts. So Yike is a good jungler, but I wouldn't put my draft around him. I would put him in a position where he can make caps or the bot lane carry. So him playing stuff like Ivern now, like I hope he plays Maokai, plays Sejuani. Like even if you are a good jungler who can play carry junglers, like you just have to understand like your peers are comparatively so much better than their counterparts.
Yes.
Just let them shine. Like just do it. And I would say that applies to the rest of the season. Like when they go to Worlds, like don't get all these crazy Belfast, Kazakhs kind of stuff in your mind. Like it might work once, might work twice, but it's just not the way the team should be playing. And now that they've shown this Ivern, like going back to this kind of play style, and if they keep up with it, I just think they will obliterate BDS.
I think another problem you have is, like, as I mentioned earlier, I've actually generally been quite impressed by Ice. I feel like he always does his job. He usually plays maybe a bit above what you'd expect. But he's also someone where this isn't the best meta. Like, he's not a person you want on Kaiser. That's not one of his champions. You can tell he's the guy who probably doesn't have insane comms, and he's almost like playing a little bit more old school ADC. You want him a little bit behind everyone while they're all going. You don't want him flying right in and then having to back that rizzle dizzle moonwalk his way out.
I mean, it is the really unique meta because you've always had like either you had really hyper early game champions like Draven, Kalista were the meta, or you have like Sivir, Saya being part of the meta. Like none of those are really in the meta.
Yep.
Like there's a little bit of Draven and Kalista here and there. So even if you're AD carry, if he's your best player right now and you're in this meta, you're not going to be too happy because he's stuck playing Ashe. He's playing Ezreal. He's playing Kai'Sa. Like Kai'Sa is also not a champion that can take over lane. So if that's like kind of what you want to go for, it's just not going to happen. Like your firepower has to come from other lanes now or other roles. Like your support and jungle like actually need to carry early games now with their picks.
By the way, a question I have just from watching the other regions is, if I watch the LPL or LCK, quite often actually I'll see them do a Jhin. I don't ever see that in LEC. Is there a reason why we don't play it in this region?
Yes, so first of all, it has a really low win rate. LEC AD carries hate the champion, but it's also really bad against tanks. And LEC top laners, they tend to lock in tanks. A lot of junglers are tanks because coaches just love that shit. Like, just pick Ornn, pick Sejuani, play everything towards bot side. These kind of matchups, like, I think in LCK and LPL, you see a lot more stuff like Camille 6. And if that's not happening, then just don't really consider it.
Right, I can't even believe I'm about to say this sentence out loud, but when Mad Lions plays Fnatic in a best of 5, do they have a chance? I can't even believe I'm saying that after the way someone went, but I guess if they do some of the crazy drafts, maybe they do.
They will try, and the onus is on Fnatic to just fuck up and not prepare, because I think like already like if G2 just picked normal champions, they would have probably won the series. And the same goes to Fnatic. And I think Fnatic has the discipline. If I look at their games, they just play well to bot side. Oscar is probably just going to play their weak side. So there's like the first thing you can do is if you start on red side, you can just reserve your counter pick for top lane. Like good luck blinding something crazy. Like you just won't do it. You still have other options, like you go on blue side, just lock in Ornn or Sion and accept that your tower might fall down, or lock in Rumble. And it's okay if you lose your lane to a crazy pick, because you're just going to put all your draft effort into the bot side of the map, and you're going to put all your resources there. You will just win the game 9 out of 10 times. So you do this on red side, you win 8 or 9 out of 10 times. You go to blue side, you win 9 out of 10 times. You can still switch it up. Like you can still go red side and decide like, okay, I'm just going to pick Ornn on 3, and we're going to counter pick support, which is also really powerful if Braum is out. Like if Braum is still like open. So I don't see Mad Lions winning 3 games. I don't, unless they find cheese in other roles, or like weird team composition that can out team fight. I can see them win a game if they snowball on Humanoid. Yeah, I don't really see a best of 5 win condition other than Fnatic not drafting when they have so many tools available. I think any good coach will have like 3 different ways to deal with these top lane shenanigans.
Yeah, that's the key thing. The obvious thing that gave Mad Lions the chance was those crazy flexes where you didn't know it was going top lane and you kept responding in the draft, etc. The thing is, basically G2 just did you a favour for Fnatic. They just showed you 5 games of what that's like from Merwin. And as you say, if you want to, because you've got such good players elsewhere, just save the counter pick for top, and then let's see. If he wants to pick his Nidalee, pick someone that can hold it in lane. If he wants to do some ridiculous small that get something ready. You can prep these champions now. Like, unfortunately, it's not a secret anymore.
The beauty of being the better team is that you can draft into your opponent's strengths. And this is usually how you win a lot in LEC. Like, okay, you play a team that's really good at playing around top lane, or like you play against a Cabo Shard who's going to play Olaf or like Adam if Darius if you give him the matchup. Just put all your draft resources into that guy. The rest of your map will be fine anyway, regardless of the matchups. Like they'll probably outperform. And even if that doesn't work, you can still just say, at least with top lane, you can say, we're just going to ignore that this role exists in the game, because we can win the game on the bot side. It's way easier to play through bot lane. If you win bot lane, your support has a lot more freedom, might have a XP advantage. So top lane should never be, like, at least in LEC, a major threat for a best of 5. So that's why Fnatic's probably just going to 3-0, 3-1 this series.
The other angle to get a game for me is Elyoya. I think Razork is just the second best player in the LEC. Fuck even jungler, mate. Like, he's unbelievable this season. He's like, should be an MVP candidate if Caps didn't exist. But I tell you what, if Elyoya can really show me something, show me some amazing control game where he shot calls everything, maybe he can get me one game. Maybe he can do something, because you can tell in their team, it's clearly the way it was designed. It's clearly his team, bro. He clearly gets to call what he wants. He kind of gets, I mean, the joke is the coach is his mate. He just gets to set the table how he wants. It's okay. It's not a stronger lineup. I don't expect it to win, but show me one game. Show me one game of what this team could do.
Yeah, and Elyoya can do it. I do think that, like, if you look at the meta, he's a little bit neutered, because I feel like he's like a really good counter jungler. Like, that's like what he has over all the other junglers, like farming and counter jungling, and it's just not that strong right now. Like, you can just, even if you lose a lot of camps, you're probably still going to be fine. But there's definitely a world where Mad Lions is actually going to, like, maybe bust out some cheese, or like some really early mid game prio, and then have like a jungler that can invade a lot, and then try to win a game off of that. And it can work. Like, if they get a big gold lead through that, and they maybe force Yike to not blind something like Ivern through that, or they might take out like Maokai Sejuani, so that they can actually play this kind of matchups where if you actually invade, it influences the game a lot. Other than that, like, he's good enough, but the meta doesn't really lend itself towards it too much, or like the counter jungling is neutered a bit too much to really make that viable. So I think he just has to tap into like his second strength, which is playing around mid lane. Like, just kill Humanoid. It has worked for like 8 years now. Like,
true.
Kill him, snowball on him, and see where it goes.
Yes. Oh, if people don't know, I always tell people, it's funny that when Humanoid came in and he started performing really well, people were like, oh, he's going to be like the next Caps or whatever. And it's like, bro, the area you're the most like Caps is, you still just abusively die in lane and just let people walk behind you as the jungler, and fucking the support of the jungle come in on you. You're like halfway up the lane. It's like, he still does that, bro. He'll always like, oh, it's like, I'll tell you a really weird story. There was a guy in my town where I lived in the UK, and I come from quite a poor area in the northeast. And there was a guy, and he was actually like a fucking martial arts teacher, right? He did like all like fucking like judo and karate and taekwondo, all that shit, right? All he did is do that all day. And he was actually like a 50-year-old man, right? So if you saw him, you wouldn't know he did all that. And this is what a fucked up weird guy this was. I don't know if he was in the war or something. There was something wrong with this guy, bro. Because what he would do was when he would go and get what you call like the unemployment money, because he mainly taught this like for not much money, you know, like when he would go and get like the benefit from the government, the money you get, right? You had to, back in the day, actually physically go, there wasn't electronic shit. You had to physically go and get like a slip that you took to the bank and they give you the money, right? He would get it, and this is not a joke. He would intentionally like put it in his pocket, so it was sort of like you'd think he hadn't seen it, but it was like sticking out because he was so fucked in the head. He wanted someone to come up and sort of grab that thing, and then he'd have an excuse to like yeah. That's like what fucking Humanoid does in lane. It's like, bro, we could just, if you even just show that weakness up a little bit, you'd win so many more games. You've got Razork as your jungler, mate. Like we don't have to be living on the edge like this. You don't have to have this thrill of I'm getting one extra CS. It's not worth it. It's not worth it, bro. It feels like it must be a really frustrating playing a coach, mate.
It has to be. But first of all, there is no new caps. There's no next caps.
True. We've learned that, yeah.
And second of all, it's so incredibly difficult to change a player because the way they got to the LEC, like the way they got them to LEC.
Yes.
They've harbored these instincts and these mechanisms for so long. It's really difficult to change someone. You cannot tell Hylissang to just play Peel for 10 games in a row.
Yes,
like
true.
He is who he is, and you just have to play into it and accept it because you're not going to change it. I've only ever seen 2 players really change up the way they play the game. First off is Razork. Razork was a real top-side jungler for the early years of his career, like the Misfits roster with
Hirit.
Yeah, with Hirit and Vetio. Like they basically did everything to the top side. And then as soon as he joined Fnatic, he got the usual Fnatic treatment. You have to play to bot side. And it was especially because of Upset and Hylissang.
Sure.
And interesting, the second player is actually Hylissang, because Hylissang used to be like the biggest roamer, but the moment he got upset in his lane, you could really see that he started to become a little bit more stuck to his lane compared to other years. But other than that, like, because I can track everything in these algorithms, so I can see if a player really changes, and it, like I said, like 99% of the times, like stats vary slightly, but you never see a big change. Like a jungler that's good at counter jungling doesn't become bad at it, but if they are a top side jungler, they don't just become a bot side jungler.
Yes.
Right? It's so rare, and this is like with the humanoid. If you're a coach, like, just give up. Like, either play into the strength, like just play around it. Like, don't sign a support that's going to be stuck to their lane. Don't sign a jungler that doesn't know how to play around mid lane, because it's not going to work. Like, you're not going to change humanoid, so just accept it. Like, let him be good at what he's good at, and then let it be. Be frustrated, let it be.
This is where I also get the sense, I know what you mean. I've heard like some of the teams have either an analyst or some of them occasionally consult the analyzer thing just in off season or whatever. But the way you can tell they're not using it is because that's another thing that's criminal. Like, I actually think low key, I know everyone's going to think Carmine Corp should get the most flame. Somehow the fact that by summer Vitality was on that roster and then came like almost last place is insane to me, because bro, I actually think everyone except the jungler could be really good. Some of them even are really good. But you look at that roster, right? First, rule number 1, we're making rules like the 10 commandments of the LEC if you're building teams. Rule number 1, if you have Hylissang, you need to put all your thought into who that jungler's going to be. You can't just take rookie junglers out of VRLs and go, there you go, mate. In England, we call that throwing you in the deep end of the pool. Like, he's going to drown. Like, he's playing with Hylissang. Hylissang doesn't know when he's going in pro. Like, this guy, I want like a veteran or someone who has like the style that works for them. So that's weird already. And then secondly, again, when I'm working with rookie junglers, right, I've got maybe the best ADC in the league, a mega aggressive one, but I've also paired him with like lane god top lane who's Korean. It's like, these, you know, and individually these are good signings, but together it's such a weird blend. Like, it never worked really.
Vitality might be the biggest disaster, but I don't think it is partly that. Okay, so you have Karsi Hylissang, you have a crazy bot lane, you have Photon who can play strong side top lane. What is the last thing you should do? Is you sign a weak side, super weak side mid laner.
Okay.
Like Hylissang cannot roam anywhere. The mid laner doesn't roam to help out bot or top. That makes them strong, like to carry games. And
so these guys so they should have signed Nisqy then, basically.
Yeah, like Nisqy would work really well on the map. Like, there's almost no weak side mid laners left in the LEC. Like, there was Vetio, there was Saken. And then if you want to go to the next guy, it's Humanoid, but Humanoid is already, or like Larson kind of, but these guys are already like not anti-roamers.
Yes.
So in the algorithm at the time, we tracked the top 200 solo queue players. If you don't rank like top 50 in any important statistic, you're filtered out. Vethio ranked 198th out of 200 in like game involvement, like leaving his lane and being involved in kills. Like this guy's incredible weak side laner. He only functions in a team where he's the best player. That's where Vethio functions.
Right.
So you don't sign like a really good top laner, a really good bot lane, and then you have like a weak side mid laner that he farms well, he team fights well, he side lanes well, but he's a player who gives other mid laners a lot of opportunities to roam, and he doesn't roam himself. So good luck when you have a strong side laners. Like it's such a bad recipe.
By the way, obviously, we're not going to give away the secret sources, so it doesn't have to be for the analyzer. But is there a player right now that's not an LEC that you think either should be or you want to be, or maybe it could be an old name, it could be a new name? Is there someone that comes to mind when I say that?
Yeah, there is. But should I say that? You know, if I'm a GM, I'm signing this player. But I'll tell you this really interesting story though. Like there was that I think like it's so like this guy has had his shot. There was a player called Hokit. Like he spelled it with a 5 and Kit. He's a Korean AD carry. He played at MSI once through the Latin America region.
Okay.
So this guy would play on the Korean server, and he would consistently rank top 5 on the Eastern server. So this is not just Korea. This is also China. Like every season, he would have 3-4 accounts in the top 10. And we tried to sign him at the end of 2020. But the way it happened is he was really hesitating to join us. And then we gave Patrick an ultimatum on Monday. He accepted on Monday. And on Tuesday, this guy comes back and says, okay, I'll join your team. Okay, this guy gets shipped off to Brazil. He becomes like the MVP of the final there, goes to MSI, of course, like gets completely demolished because his team overall is not that good. But he just continues, like every time he flies back to Korea, he plays there, we run the analyzer. Yep, there he is, he's top 5 again. Like this guy is on the same level, like almost on the same level of the likes of Gumayusi, but he's there with Viper,
fucking hell,
with like Pace, Ruler, and this guy is playing in Brazil for the last like 3-4 years. Like that is like maybe the saddest thing that came through the analyzer. Like for the most part, like I'm really sad about not being able to have used it in Excel, especially like the 2023 season. I guess I can talk about this, but we really went ham on one mid laner, and that's Quid. Like our analyzer already told us the year before that, like this guy might. Yeah, when he was 15, our analyst already told us like this guy might be like he's growing every year. Like we were seeing like a trend of growth. And then when it came to that off season, we tried really hard to sign him, but at the end, he had the contract running until December, and he just didn't want to leave to Europe at that point because he thought he might be promoted. He just wanted to see what would happen, and then so he said no to us. And then a few months later, he did go to NA, so that like it did hurt a little bit extra. And then we tried to sign another mid laner. That's actually we only had Korean mid laners on our list. Like we already knew like. It was not going to be LEC mid laner, so we actually the algorithm had 2 options. Like we had Fisher,
who was on EDG, now he's in LCK. Yep.
Yeah. So like there you go. And the third one was actually someone that I would still love to see in the LEC, but I don't think it's going to happen. It's Tempt. And a lot of people, when you hear this name, were like, "What? This guy's old. He's Korean. He didn't play that well." But if you look at the algorithms, and even like. I don't care about competitive stats too much, but if you look at his competitive stats in the ERLs, he was knocking it out of the park. And what's great about him is he played in Europe, so we have him compared to other mid laners in Europe.
Yes.
Because there's, of course, it's really difficult to sign.
Yes, of course.
There's also some fun stories there because like that was 2020 spring. Chase is playing in Korea. He's on our radar, but he's like the 3rd best top laner. Like we would never consider signing him. Flies to Europe, plays for like X7, I think it was, and he's rank 1 in Europe. Like that's how bad the top lane champion pool was, right? Like that kind of just goes to show. But yeah, like a player like Tempt is really good, was scoring very high in all metrics, and he's a player that you can build a roster around. So there's more. It's just like I don't feel really comfortable saying that because I feel like any org that wants to have a chat with me, you know, like
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'll be your GM, I'll be your roster builder, I'll be whatever you want. I can build a roster through this kind of good shit.
Yeah. You have to understand, if they'd listen to him, they'd be rocking fucking Zeus, Quid mid lane, they'd have a fucking baller team. Yeah, you would have been living the dream, maybe.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, there is a roster where we would have had not Quid, but we would have had something like Tempt, Jaehoon, Patrick, Xerxes, and Finn or Odo. Like wherever you want to put in there. Like that would have been a team playing for Worlds. And now that we're here talking about it, like, because when we're talking about players making each other worse or being undervalued, there's one player that didn't get that got done so dirty, and that's Xerxes. Xerxes had to play in a roster with a weak side top laner, weak side mid laner, and a support that's not good at laning, and a support that only roams really well, like Targamas. And then there was a meta where the AD carry doesn't really play to his strengths. Like Xerxes got sacrificed to the gods, but this guy, there was even a leak on one of the stage games. Like Xerxes was shot calling from start to finish, and he was actually and still is a LEC level player.
But people don't know he just won Super League. I just did an interview with Giotto. He even told me he definitely should be back in LEC.
He should be. Like, he is a top 10 LEC player who has you don't just sign players just on individual skill. You also sign them based on their profile. Xerxes is one of the few players that plays around bot lane very well. I really hope that this guy goes back to LEC. I think based off of stigmas and whatnot,
sure.
It's just not going to happen. But oh man, if one guy got done dirty, because this guy could be and should have still been on the roster based on algorithms, but also just his personality, work ethics, shot calling, everything. This guy got sacrificed for no reason.
I'll also say as well, people have gone too far with the obsession of everyone has to be 18 or 19. It's not like in some of the bottom teams you can have that guy for 5 years. If he's good now and he's 25 or 26, just have him for a year or two. It's you're building your team for today. It's not really you're not like Chelsea. You're not trying to sign young players and have them be good in 5 years. That's not even the job. You get fired as a coach after a year anyway. It doesn't work. I feel like people still think. I actually think for real, YoungBuck, that couple of seasons where we got Caps, and then after him came Larson, Nemesis, Humanoid, Crowny. That just broke people's brains, and it made them think every time you dip in, you get those players, and you don't. In fact, half the time you take it out and you go, actually, I'm tired. It's like fucking Toy Story. I'm tired of playing with you. Just throw them away again, and then they just disappear else back into the lava. I think that the obsession with thinking you get the 19-year-old super player. There's not that many out there.
No, everyone was trying to sign the next caps, every single offseason. Everyone was going all in on T-Plex, then on Chijak, and suddenly no team needs Koreans anymore because they suck, and we have ERL talents. Yep. And now look at where we are. Almost every team again has Koreans on the roster. Stick to these big names, and then try to sign maybe one rookie, but it's probably not the next caps. There are not that many right now in Europe that are the next caps or the next whatever. There, you see in the algorithm, you see some inconsistencies. There's the support player who's ranking top 5 every single time, and he's playing in ERLs. And if I tell you his name, you'll be like, I don't see it, but he's just being held back by his team, and you don't see it because the eye test. It's really difficult to scout players based off of competitive games because a team has its own identity. So, if you're let's say you're Broken Blade and your roster plays towards you every single game, your competitive stats look amazing. But the moment you are Broken Blade and your team plays towards bot side, and I look at you, you suddenly look like dog shit. And it's so hard to accurately value a player based off of competitive games, even though it's the only tool you have if you use your eyes. It's what you have. You're lucky if you get scrim vods or things along those lines, or solo queue access that other people don't have. So. Yeah, I don't really know where to go from there, but
no, it's good.
I think scouting is just really difficult. I do genuinely think that if you're an organization and you don't use something like an algorithm, try to listen to your S tier player if you have one. That's the best thing you can do is doing that and not GMing through Reddit or listening to your coach. The best thing is actually listen to a Caps, Razork, a Mickey X type of player. If you don't have access to that, use a coach. If you don't have access to that, use an average to lower tier player, because those people are the people that will do the most damage to your org because they think they see a good player, and guess what? They're not. That happens so often because great recognizes great, average recognizes average, or
right.
They don't see the difference because they themselves cannot really process it.
There you go, guys. It was a one-off. We just brought him in at the end here, YoungBuck, to analyse this. And I knew I could get some good stories about the behind the scenes and all the secret shit. Like I've actually, by the way, I've told a version of that there was a team that had Zeus before, but I didn't say who it was. I kept everyone's identity safe on that one. But now you know if you watch. So obviously that wasn't Dom. Dom will appear again at some point in time. We'll see who it is next week in not Dom's seat. Thank you, everyone.